Good morning. The committee will come to order. I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning, and I want to especially thank the witnesses for being here. Today we're here because of the enormous role the federal government plays as a customer. In fact, it purchased over $550 billion of goods and services last year. Whether it is rebuilding roads, outfitting offices with 21st century technology, or creating cutting-edge equipment for our medical laboratories or armed services, small firms are producing the innovative and quality products the federal government is looking to buy. Which brings me to why we're here today. Those who have been following the committee closely know that it is a top priority for both the ranking member and myself to ensure that the federal government is receiving contract bids from small business and those firms that have the resources and to make sure that those firms have the resources they need to understand the federal contracting process. That is why Congress created government-wide contracting goals, which require federal agencies to award a percentage of contracts to historically underserved populations. Our committee has already held hearings on how to strengthen SBA initiatives to increase access to the federal marketplace for women and veteran-owned small businesses. So today we'll be taking an overdue examination at the Small Business and Capital Ownership Development Program, more commonly known as the 8A program. The 8A program provides small firms owned by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals with increased access to the federal marketplace, procurement training, technical assistance, and the ability to be paired with a mentor. The government also has a goal to award 5% of all prime and subcontracting dollars to small disadvantaged businesses, including 8A certified firms. Its purpose is simple: to promote the development and competitiveness of small businesses looking to contract with the federal government. And make no mistake, minority-owned businesses continue to be a driving force in our economy. According to the SBA 2018 Small Business Profile, there are 8 million minority-owned small businesses in the United States. These small businesses accounted for almost 30% of all firms, contributed $1.38 trillion in revenue, and make up over 7.2 million jobs in the United States. However, this progress has not been accomplished without hardships along the way. While some may want to minimize the barriers created by discrimination, that does not make it any less real. Throughout our nation's history, minorities have suffered the effects of discriminatory practices in access to affordable credit, housing, criminal justice, and education. Consequently, the path to starting and running a business for minority entrepreneurs has been difficult. The 8A program was designed to make it just a little easier, while also encouraging minority entrepreneurship and further improving the federal marketplace as a whole. Over 40 years ago, Congress determined that the opportunity for full participation in the federal marketplace is essential if we are to obtain social and economic equality, and have an economy that works for everyone. This premise, which remains as true today as it was more than 40 years ago, is the reason why I am committed to making sure that the 8A program works as intended. Given how critical this program is to our nation's well-being, I am troubled by ongoing problems. Over the past few years, the SBA's Office of Inspector General identified issues that we will discuss today. For example, despite a rise in contract dollars to 8A participants, the number of 8A firms remain in decline. We need more 8A firms, not fewer. But to reverse this trend, we need to understand why fewer owners are utilizing this program so this committee can ensure eligible firms have the necessary resources and tools to become certified and win contracts. But getting certified is just the beginning and is not guaranteed for winning an award. We need to make sure the SBA will aid, monitor, and support the business development needs of 8A firms for the duration of their time in the program. And finally, it is time we look closely at ways to modernize the program to bring it into the 21st century. It is my hope today's hearing will help us determine if things like the standard for net worth, which hasn't changed in over 30 years, adequately reflects the reality of our times. Today's hearing will give this committee an opportunity to discuss what can be done to best serve the 8A community. I thank all of our witnesses for their attendance and insights into this important topic, and I will now yield to the ranking member, Mr. Chabot, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for holding this important hearing on a program that means so much to so many disadvantaged entrepreneurs across the country. The 8A program is a crucial component of the SBA's arsenal of small business programs. Given that it's the longest-running and most well-established business development program maintained by the SBA, taking the time to revisit this program today is certainly a worthwhile undertaking. The federal government has long recognized the policy that the government should aid, counsel, assist, and protect the interests of small business concerns. However, special recognition has been given to the socially and economically disadvantaged. The federal government, through the Small Business Act, recognizes the opportunity for full participation in our free enterprise system by socially and economically disadvantaged persons is essential to obtaining equality and improving the function of our national economy. The 8A program was developed with this policy goal in mind, creating a protective space for these types of firms to grow and succeed so they may later rise to become fully capable, competitive, and productive members of our nation's workforce. To further spur economic growth among this group of businesses, the federal government imposes a statutory goal of awarding at least 5% of all prime and subcontracting dollars to a socially and economically disadvantaged firm. According to the SBA, this goal was exceeded in fiscal year 2018, with nearly $46.5 billion being awarded to small, disadvantaged businesses. While these numbers seem to indicate a measure of success, it's important for us to take the time today to really grasp the human aspect of this federal program. Applying to become an 8A eligible program is not an easy task. These entrepreneurs must show that they have faced substantial hardship in their lives and careers in order to qualify for the program. In addition, they must continue to show demonstrated success year after year in order to remain in good standing. The success of these businesses also translates directly to broader benefits, whether in the form of increasing the number of jobs in the local area or amplifying economic activity within their communities. Given that these businesses only have 9 years to participate in this program, it's incumbent on us as members of this committee to ensure that the program is effectively acting as a launch pad for sustained success. That's why, again, today's hearing is so important. Not only do we need to devote time to hear from our witnesses the successes that this program can bring for socially and economically disadvantaged entrepreneurs, we also need to understand where improvements can be made to ensure that the program is operating optimally and fairly. It's in the best interest of our nation's economy and the very fabric of our communities to ensure that this program yields high-quality, productive, and successful small disadvantaged businesses and entrepreneurs. I want to thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for holding this hearing and yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chabot. The gentleman yields back. And if committee members have an opening statement prepared, we will ask they be submitted for the record. I would like to take just a minute to explain the timing rules. Each witness gets 5 minutes to testify, and each member gets 5 minutes for questioning. There is a lighting system to assist you. The green light will be on when you begin, and the yellow light will come on when you have 1 minute remaining. The red light will come on when you are out of time, and we ask that you stay within the time frame to the best of your ability. I will now like to introduce our witnesses. Our first witness is Mr. Ralph C. Thomas III, Executive Director and a representative of the National Association of Minority Contractors. He is also a government contracts litigator who focuses his practice on legal issues affecting small businesses in the federal contracting arena, including the SBA's Business Development Program. From 1992 to 2005, Mr. Thomas was the Associate Administrator for Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization at NASA in Washington, D.C., where he reported directly to the head of NASA. He received his Juris Doctor degree from Harvard Law School and his Bachelor of Arts degree with honors from the University of California at Berkeley. Welcome, Mr. Thomas. Our second witness is Ms. Dottie Lee, the founder and CEO of Trans-Pacific Communications, an sba8a company. Prior to becoming CEO, Ms. Lee moved from broadcast and print journalism to work as a corporate spokesperson and public relations executive. She then served at the White House, handling media advance assignments for presidential trips, and later as a communication chief for several large and national and international nonprofit organizations. Just last year, Ms. Lee was recognized as one of Maryland's top 100 women in 2015 by the Daily Record. Welcome, Ms. Lee. Our next witness today is Mr. Clarence McAllister. Mr. McAllister is the co-founder and CEO of Fortis Networks, a former AA company that provides general construction services. He started the company in 2000 after an engineering career and today has 120 employees across 7 states. Mr. McAllister has more than 30 years of experience in all facets of the construction industry. He holds a Master of Business Administration from Nova Southeastern University and both a Bachelor and a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering from Arizona State University. Welcome, sir. And now I yield to the ranking member to introduce our final witness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our final witness today will be Ms. Rebecca Askew, founder and CEO of Circuit Media, LLC. Circuit Media was established in 2002 and is dually based in both Denver and Washington, D.C. It's a certified 8A small disadvantaged business and an economically disadvantaged women-owned small business, and the company supplies goods and services at the state and federal level. Before founding Circuit Media, Ms. Askew served as corporate counsel for an international media technology company, started her own litigation law firm, and served as a government prosecutor. She earned her BA from the University of Iowa and JD from the University of Denver Sturm College of Law. In addition, Ms. Askew received training in change management and design thinking from Harvard University. We thank you for your participation today, Ms. Askew. We look forward to hearing from all the witnesses here this morning, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chabot. Mr. Thomas, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Oh, talk, okay. Good morning, Madam Chairman and other members of this distinguished committee. My name, as was stated, is Ralph Thomas, and I'm here on behalf of the National Association of Minority Contractors. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and we're the oldest minority construction trade association in the U.S. Our organization advocates on behalf of the near 100,000 minority contractors, minority construction contractors across the U.S. As was mentioned, I'm also an attorney who represents minority contractors in government contracting issues. And as was stated, I was the AA for the NASA Small and Disadvantaged Business Office from 1992 to 2005. Now, our written testimony, and I'll just summarize because you have it in front of you, but it's broken into 5 parts. One in which we express our strongest support for the 8A program. You know, though it is sometimes flawed, it nevertheless provides the best vehicle for minority contractors to break into government contracting. And for the reasons that I've laid out in the written testimony. We feel that the mentor protege program, particularly that part which allows minority contractors or 8A contractors to obtain joint ventures with large contractors, it allows them to evolve to a higher level of government contracting. The second part of our testimony, I've provided a short history of the 8A program for the newer members of this committee. Third, I've given an illustration of 8A's contractors' best successes. When I began as executive director of NAMC in 1985, 8A firms were primarily used by federal agencies to perform small contracts in construction, administrative contract support, and janitorial maintenance contracts. However, when I served as the head of NASA's Small Business Program from 1992 to 2005, I watched 8A contractors perform such mission-critical activities as developing subsystems for complex spacecraft, assisting in building non-rocket-powered vehicles to fly at hypersonic speed, and manufacturing hardware for the International Space Station. So they were also more involved in more complex service-oriented contracts such as space shuttle-related software development, safety and mission assurance, systems engineering. So I proudly observed the continued success of some of these companies that have graduated from the 8A program and are still performing at a high level. The fourth part of my statement, of my written testimony, we've commented to a limited degree on the last OIG report regarding the 8A program. And you can see that for yourself, and if you want me to elaborate, I will. Finally, we've listed some of our concerns and suggestions for improvements to the program. For example, we're concerned about those contractors that are left behind, the ones that don't, most 8A contractors do not, in fact, receive contracts, during their tenure, and we're very concerned about that. We also request that this committee follow up on a study of graduated 8A firms. The last one done was in '88 by the Senate Committee on Small Business, who were concerned that the contracts are getting so large that smaller 8A firms are being left out. We've also, this doesn't concern this committee, but we're hearing about disparate treatment of African American and Latino women-owned businesses in the DOT program. We have a few concerns about the mentor protege program, and we'd also like to nail down the non-procurement assistance to 8A contractors, financial, technical, and management support from the agency. That ends my oral testimony, and once again, thank you for allowing me to testify today, and I'm now ready for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Ms. Lee, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairwoman Velázquez, Vice Chair Evans, Ranking Member Shabbat, and each member of this committee. It is an honor to speak with you. I'm also pleased to appear before Representative Chu, Chair of KPAC, and along with Representative Kim, whom I'm also met. It is almost a full year since my company, Trans-Pacific Communications, became an 8A. It also has been almost 1 full year since that Trans-Pacific Communications has yet to receive an 8A contract. Why the delay? I believe there is a critical gap between the SBA 8A policy, which is great, and the operations. Operational movement at agency level would greatly enhance a new 8A firm like Trans-Pacific Communications in obtaining 8A contracts. I'm here today to present my perspective as a new 8A company and the challenges we face in the system. More importantly, I'm here to offer some suggestions I believe will make the 8A program better to reduce and eliminate the gap between policy and operation. I was born and raised in China, a little girl who dreamed of going to America and becoming a Voice of America broadcaster. I struggled when I got here. The culture shock of finding myself in Mobile, Alabama, my accent, a combination of British-taught English, overlaying my Chinese intonation, and now marinated in a Southern drawl. After finishing my graduation, I landed my very first job as a broadcaster at Voice of America 2 blocks from here. When I later became a corporate spokesperson, I worked hard with a professional coach to clear up my speech. I found my speaking voice, the one allowing me to sound natural and credible. This did not wash away my Asian identity. It added a layer of my new American identity to it. It was a life-changing experience. It also helped me discover my calling. Many in the Asian American and other immigrant communities have the same experience, that we excel academically, get good jobs, perform well, but many fail to achieve our full potential and are unable to fully contribute in the workplace and in society. Many of their employers and managers are also frustrated. They see talent and drive that is hindered by poor communication skills and cultural barriers on both sides. I became certified to train others so they could transform their lives and careers as I did, and Trans-Pacific Communications was born. We serve several different industries, corporations, and higher education, and many federal agencies. You have a long list of those. But even with the support of satisfied agency managers, I had to find a way to grow and scale so that we could help more federal workers. And 8A appeared to be the solution. I started looking into the 8A application process in late 2017. The process is daunting and lengthy. After submitting the complex application, it was wait and wait and wait. Finally, an SBA official intervened and introduced me directly to the person who handled my file. It took too many more months, but then on September 25th, 2018, we finally got the 8A certificate. I was elated and ready to go. An 8A sole source BPA contract with an agency was supposedly ready for me. I began planning, allocating resources and staff, but nothing happened, no movement. I'd like to offer some suggestions in the hope of improving the process for others. One is to put a check-in mechanism in place that allows 8A firms to move in a timely fashion. It will also hold agencies accountable while SBA provides oversight to avoid 8A firms being left in limbo. It is critical that operations be empowered in order for 8A firms to successfully obtain contracts. Coordination, collaboration, and teamwork among SBA, contracting agencies, and 8A participants must be improved. Strengthening the mentoring of 8A participants is needed during the contracting process between contractor and subcontractor and outside of any contract relationship. I'm grateful to be in the 8A program. It has given us a good platform as we wait to experience its full potential as we contribute to our economy and fulfill the mission to serve others. I offer my full statement for the record, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Ranking Member, and the entire committee.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Mr. McAllister, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, committee chair, vice chair, ranking members. Thank you for the invitation to be here. My name is Clarence McAllister. We're a successful graduate of the 8A program. I'm also an immigrant, came to this country 30 years ago, and obtained a great education, started a company, we did become MB certified, DB certified, and found that those programs were not able to allow us to grow the company. So the next step was federal contracting. So 7 years into, I started the business in 2000. 2008, we applied for the 8A program. It took us a year to get our application approved to the program. And once we got started in the program, we realized that we didn't have the expertise to do federal contracting. So we had to join several networking groups like the Society of American Military Engineers to become familiar with federal contracting. Phoenix is not a large city for federal contracting, so we had to travel to states like California, neighboring states, California, New Mexico, Texas, and visit bases of military bases of the beating path, and we were very successful at it. We grew the company substantially, fourfold. We had 2 mentor-protege programs. They have helped us substantially in growing the company, increasing our bonding capacity as a construction company, and obtain contracts that on our own we would not be able to qualify successfully. So the MPA program, I believe, definitely should be expanded, and there should be a good. The SBA should perhaps serve as a matchmaker between 8A companies and potential mentors as well. We transitioned out of the 8A program 2 years ago, is when we graduated. And I've heard figures that 90% of 8A companies are out of business 2 years after graduation. So we're 2 years past graduation, and we started that transition process early on, and some of the tools, the paths that we utilize are: one, we apply for several IDIQs, multiple award task order contract that were 5 years in length, so that by the time we graduated, we still had 3, 4, 5 years to compete. We're very successful at that. So after year 9, we're still competing for some of those 8A contracts that we got awarded when we were 8A. We move into the Hub Zone. We believe the Hub Zone is a great program. If you're not 8A, I believe the Hub Zone is the second best program. And we move into a neighborhood that needed some help. We hire employees from that neighborhood, and we're successfully pursuing Hub Zone contracts right now. The third strategy was to mentor newly 8As, and we've been successful at that. Our first contract as an 8A took us about 2 years to get. We've been mentoring an 8A company, and they've gotten their 8A contracts in the first year. So there's definitely a benefit to that. I submit that even though minorities have indeed entered economic mainstream, the net worth of average minority household is only a fraction of that of white households. According to Forbes magazine's, the median white household owns 86 times more wealth than his black counterpart, and 68 times more than his Hispanic counterpart. Even though the 8A program is not a solution to America's inequality, I believe that it's a tool to assist minorities be successful, hire more minorities, and upgrade our communities. Thus, the 8A program should not be eliminated. It should be strengthened, and I do have some recommendations for that. Number one, extend the 8A program beyond 9 years, because it usually takes 5 years for an 8A contractor, at least in my field in construction, to obtain the bonding capacity experience to be able to qualify and compete for larger contracts. So 9 years is not enough. Federal contracts, construction contracts over 100,000 require bonding. Most 8A contractors are not able to build that equity in the business to be able to bond larger contracts unless they are into mentor-protege, for example. Expedite the application process. I believe that just recently, last couple of years, it's now online and takes less time, but I'm still hearing about 6 months, 8 months for approval. Provide legal assistance to 8A contractors. If you're an 8A contractor and you don't know the FAR, you can get in trouble very easily. And it's something that most attorneys not even qualified for. And access to capital is very important as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. Ms. Askew, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Evans, Ranking Member Chabot, Chair Velázquez, and members of the committee. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. My name is Rebecca Askew, and I am CEO and General Counsel of Circuit Media, located in Denver, Colorado. We provide competitive intelligence to business and legal professionals through print and online media. I am also on the Leadership Advisory Council for Women Impacting Public Policy, or WIP. WIP is a national nonpartisan policy organization advocating on behalf of women entrepreneurs. I started Circuit Media, like most entrepreneurs, in my basement. Now my company has grown to 60 employees with offices in Denver and DC. I am testifying today about a program that has contributed to my success, the Small Business Administration's 8A Business Development Program. The 8A program has given my company access to federal contracts that would not have otherwise occurred. However, I think it is important to make something clear. This program is a hand up, not a handout. As the SBA states, the mission of the program is to help provide a level playing field for small businesses owned by socially and economically disadvantaged people or entities. Now in my 7th year of the program, I have been strategic in ensuring that I balance contracts both in and out of the program. Having this balance has resulted in my success in the 8A program and creating a sustainable company. While the 8A program has allowed me to find a successful path forward, I know many companies have not had the same experience. One of the downfalls for any company is over-relying on 8A contracts while in the program. This results in difficulties when it is time to transition out of the program. Many companies go out of business, sell, or reinvest themselves to stay small. One of the ways the Small Business Administration is trying to tackle this issue is through the 7J Management and Technical Assistance Program. Although this type of training is valuable, it would be beneficial for the SBA to consider having 2 tracks, one for businesses who are in the beginning phases of the program and one that is more advanced for businesses nearing graduation. Since the 8A Business Development Program is only 9 years, a solution is to make sure that other SBA socioeconomic set-aside programs are available for companies post-graduation. Proposals such as H.R. 190, which passed out of the committee earlier this year, would allow other socioeconomic programs, women-owned, service-disabled, veteran-owned, and HUB-zoned, to take advantage of increased access to sole source contracts. By making these set-aside programs similarly accessible to federal agencies, graduated 8A companies could continue to effectively utilize this set-aside strategy after transition out of the program. Another challenge for 8A businesses is to take full advantage of the program during the first years of the program, otherwise known as the developmental stage. Government contracting requires a company to have significant business development and financial acumen. Young companies may not have the internal infrastructure to compete for and perform on government contracts. Given the length of time it takes for an agency to become familiar with a contractor, changing the criteria for acceptance into the program could help attract companies that can fully utilize the program at the time of entry. I have greatly appreciated the opportunities afforded to me through my participation in the 8A program and have made a concerted effort to extend these rewards to my employees and my community. As a certified green company, Circuit Media has developed and funded campaigns educating businesses and schools across the country on the benefits of recycling and reduction in paper towel usage. In addition, we donate time, money, and services to the Trust for Public Lands, Leave No Trace, and Denver's Highline Conservancy. We have established an internship program for at-risk youth who attend Denver Public Schools and offer our employees tuition reimbursement and paid time off to volunteer in the community. In conclusion, the 8A program has been beneficial to my growth, and as this committee examines the program, I would urge you to consider my recommendations. Thank you for inviting me to testify at this important hearing, and I look forward to answering any questions. And I'll yield my time.
I thank you, and we appreciate you for all the information you have shared to us. The chairwoman has done a fantastic job in putting this together, so I want to not mess up for her, so I want to be clear. So what I'd like to do is begin by yielding myself 5 minutes. I'd like to start off with Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas, the government has the goal of awarding 5% of all eligible prime contractors of socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses. Agencies get credit for 8A small disadvantaged businesses and 9A small disadvantaged businesses, like a 8A guarantee. While this information is available through the Federal Procurement Data System from a review of the annual scorecard, it cannot be determined what percentage of federal spending dollars 8A firms are receiving. Would it make sense to require SAB, Small Business Administration, to report 8A specific data in the scorecard? If so, how would such data help make better understanding of the 8A program?
Let me say yes, the 8A information should definitely be included. and added to the scorecard. First of all, you have to know as much as you can about what's happening in the 8A program in order to assess it, in order to assess its needs. I had a boss, one of the NASA administrators, who used to say, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so if we can gather as much information that we can on the 8A contracting, on the 8A contractors and what contracting dollars they're getting, we can have something to improve on. And secondly, yes, I think it should be made part of the SBA score, but because when you keep a record of anything in terms of numbers, they tend to improve each year.
Thank you. I'd like to go to Ms. Lee. As an 8A participant, have you been able to receive training in areas such as marketing through the 7J program? If so, what has your experience been with the training? And then I'm going to add a follow-up so you can think about that. What should improvements be made in the training program?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair Evans. I have, pardon me, my bad. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair Evans. Yes, I have received some training through the 7J program, thanks to the SBA official who made me aware of those programs, and I took part in some training. They were helpful, yet I believe they should be, they would be better off if they were offered in person as a group or one-on-one. I believe those programs would be much better beneficial if they could conduct that for a group of entrepreneurs like us and coming to our facilities to provide those training.
Mr. McAllister, currently individual-owned 8A small businesses can receive sole source awards of less than $4 million for goods and services. The current administrator of the Office of Government and Contracting Vendors said in 2017 that increasing the 8A sole threshold is one way SAB would make a special gain. Do you have any thoughts on this statement, whether Congress should, in fact, increase the 8A sole source threshold?
Yes, I do agree that the sole source threshold of $4 million should be increased. If you look at, for example, the small business size, I believe in the last year, all of them, or the majority of them, were increased. In my, for example, my next code, 236220 for construction, used to be capped as 33.5 million, and it's now at 36 million for small business size. So we have, you know, a increase in cost of living and other expenses going up, and these small business 8A sole source remains at 4 million, where you have the A and C companies, Alaska Native corporations, with 20 million sole source limits as well. So I do believe that for 8A companies, the sole source limit should be increased beyond 4 million.
Thank you. My time is now expired, and the ranking member, Mr. Shavit, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Askew, I'll begin with you. Given the short time frame for participation in the program, 9 years, what can the SBA do to ensure that these 9 years are the most beneficial to 8A participants?
Thank you, Ranking Member Shabbat. I believe that I'm in Denver, and we have an amazing SBA program. They have really been on the ground and working with me from day one. I don't believe that that is the same experience that other 8A organizations have within the United States. Mm-hmm. I know one of my colleagues who they don't even have a business opportunity specialist attached to them. They just call the phone, and hopefully someone will respond and help them. So I think that, you know, the uniformity in assistance and training right from the bat is very valuable. And I also believe that, you know, getting to understand how the SBA works, how they support you throughout the program, I think is vitally important. You know, it took me months to really understand how the whole, there's quite a a bureaucracy, for lack of better words, in trying to understand who helps you with what and how does that pan out. And I really believe that that's would be valuable as well. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to hear that the program in Denver is so good, and we would hope, and I think this committee we would want to aspire to have the programs all across the country so everybody can benefit. And if their program doesn't meet the standards that you found, we ought to try to work towards that. So, and that's something we can do in a bipartisan way, I would hope. Mr. McAllister, I'll move to you next. How long did the entire application process take, and from the first application submission to receiving the 8A certification notification?
Yeah, it took me, well, the first notification probably took about 6 months. I was told that you always are going to get some comments, so it took me about 6 months, and then the final approval took about a year. Now, this is 11 years ago.
Okay, thank you. Could you describe the application process so we can kind of, some of the folks who may not be familiar with it can hear what it's like, and are there any improvements that you would recommend so that others might maybe have an easier process than others?
Yeah, well, again, it was all paper-based back then. One of the requirements was to have 2 years in business as experience, which I thought is a great idea. You don't want to have a new startup getting into a program where they're not going to be able to take a full advantage of it. So 2 years was the minimum requirement. Beyond that, things like net worth, there were some minimums, which I believe that they should be increased as well, same as the sole source requirements. And the process involved basically filling out lots of paperwork and what you've done in the last 2 years, your experience, where you got funding from. Make sure that basically you bootstrap the company, because as an 8A company, you're not allowed to have investors, outside investors. So in some instances, I know companies who've struggled for 2 years and really minimal revenues just to qualify to get in the 8A program. We got in. We applied 7 years in business. We were in business for 7 years, so we had a good track record. We had a bonding capacity. We had customers already in place. So by the time we got approved for the program, we're already ready to grow. But yeah, it was definitely very extensive. I've been told that now the program is online and it's taking less time, but I haven't had experience with that in the last couple of years.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Ms. Lee, do you feel the 8A program adequately prepared you to compete against larger, more well-established firms?
The short answer is no. Okay. I think by the time we received the 8A certificate, I was not ready for a lot of bureaucratic items and things that are within the system. I believe, again, referring to my testimony, things are in the system that just preventing people from moving forward. And so that's another reason for my recommendation to eliminate and reduce some of the gap between the policy and operation.
Excellent. Well, we should definitely strive to improve the program so all can benefit from it. Mr. Thomas, unfortunately, I ran out of time before I got my question to you. You would have been next, and it would have been a great question. So.
The story of my life, that's all right.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to thank the ranking member and go to someone who I've watched, and she's done a fantastic job. She's been like Representative Davis from Kansas. She has 5 minutes.
Thank you. Well, first, I'm excited to be able to participate in this hearing today because the 8A program presents a unique and valuable opportunity for small businesses to compete for valuable federal contracts. But the recent decrease in participation in the program has been discouraging, and I hope we can address some of those issues here today. The Small Business Administration did try to increase participation through streamlining the application process. I do worry, though, that that streamlining has may have eroded some of the safeguards that ensure that we have proper certification and eligibility for the program. And recently, I've been more concerned about the issues that have come to light about eligibility requirements for Native American contractors participating in the 8A program. And hopefully in the future, our committee will be able to examine some of those issues more in depth. But the first thing I would like to do actually is follow up on the previous question that the ranking member was bringing up, which is, Ms. Lee, I would love to hear a little bit. I'm often concerned about the barriers to participation, but then also once you have participation, we want it to be a successful program. So I would love to hear a little bit more about when you say, no, the program didn't necessarily help compete against the bigger firms. Can you give us a couple of concrete examples of that? I think that those are often the best ways for us to be able to make good policy arguments.
I believe when a big firm, a well-known firm, I'm not going to give any names, when they walk into an agency, agencies tend to respond to them better, and we may be an unknown entity, even though we've been performing excellent work within this same agency, yet they tend to gravitate toward this big name firm, and yet we're left behind, left on the sideline. We're not being considered just for the mere fact that we don't have the capacity as these large firms do, or may seem to have, yet we provide such a niche service that addresses these agencies' problems. We solve a problem, and these large firms can't really compete with us. However, we're missing the opportunities to get into the game.
Thank you. And that actually, I think, helps with even understanding sometimes some of the barriers. Speaking of folks understanding and knowing about the 8A program, I wonder if Mr. McAllister, I'll start with you. If you could speak to some of the barriers of the program. You already brought up a couple of things, which were the question that brought out the threshold increase was insightful. And then you mentioned bonding and also an increase in the number of years for the program. I would love to hear a little bit more from you about either barriers to the program or also once you're in the program, what some of the improvements we could see are.
Well, certainly, like I said, the Mentor Program is a good program. If you cannot compete with the big boys, you may as well join them, right? And that's what we've done. We never go after against a large company. It's a losing battle. And most large companies are looking for smaller companies to team up with, to do mentor proteges with as well. So that's one of the things that could be done to be more competitive. I believe that the purpose of the 8A program is to allow companies, when they graduate, to be successful outside of the program. And we found that outside of the federal programs, we have not been given the opportunity. When we started the company, it was difficult to compete in the commercial sector. We went to the federal market to build that capacity, and as we exited that, we found that it's still challenging because we don't have those networks, those connections on the private sector to compete. So we're still challenged in that regards. We still continue to do that, but what we've done is stay in the federal market, do the HubZone program, some of the other programs, but I believe that the SBA should be perhaps help the 8A companies do that transitioning part better so they can be successful and we don't have this high level of failures of 8A companies after graduation.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas said I talked too long, but I'm curious really quickly, do you feel like the SBA supports organizations like yours? And I'm more familiar with the Native American Contractors Association, but do you feel like the SBA is supportive of these organizations so that we can start to branch out, so we can see them branching out once the 8A program has expired?
Not as much as used to. I remember years ago when the SBA used to give grants to organizations like ours and the ones you just mentioned for marketing purposes, for bringing people to training and things like that. But over the years, it has decreased. And maybe in our next. We still have time. I wanted to address.
We're 30 seconds over. Can I ask that you submit? For the record a little bit more, and then I can look at it.
Yes, later. I wanted to address your question, and we'll do about Native American contractors and certifying with the 8A program. But the barriers to them getting in, I've represented them before, and there are problems.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I yield back.
What I'd like to do now is recognize the gentleman who's the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Contracting and Infrastructure, Representative Pete Stauber from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a few questions, Ms. Askew. You know, I am particularly impressed with one of the lines in your testimony today, that the 8A program is a hand up, not a handout. You know, as a small business owner myself, I know how important the SBA programs are in helping our small businesses grow and thrive. But you are so right. The government is, or at least should be here to assist in times of need, not hold your hand cradle to grave, but rather give every American small business owner the opportunity to be independently successful. An item that was highlighted in the 2016 OIG report was declining participation in the 8A program. Two questions. How do you feel we best keep the program thriving without encouraging people to be reliant on the government? And then what can we do better to market the 8A program as a stepping stone to independence?
Thank you for your questions. I think that my colleagues here at the table have talked a little bit about some of the issues and the barriers in regards to why organizations might not choose to become part of the 8A program. It is not an easy task to get into the program. And once you do, there is that period of time that you need to navigate through the information in order to get to those nuggets.
Right.
I consider the 8A program as just basically a fishing license. I got a fishing license, and now I need to go out and figure out how to fish and which waters I should fish.
And you can fish any of the 10,000 lakes of Minnesota.
That's right, and I have actually. So that is definitely, a very positive thing. And I think that, part of the things that we've seen in regards of how do you get to be, it's a huge morass of businesses, and how do you get in, agencies, and how do you get in front of those and make that impactful impression when you have many companies that have full-time business development folks in the D.C. area constantly knocking on everyone's doors. So it does, I think, to Ms. Lee's point of making sure you differentiate yourself is definitely a way in which you can not only be seen by agencies, but also be sustainable. And that's certainly the impact that you're wanting to have.
How was your, during the application process, give us a sense of how you went through it. Was it difficult? What areas can we improve on or, shorten that process up?
Sure. So Mr. McAllister did mention that it used to be a paper process, and it's currently more of an electronic process. And I think that has improved, certainly improved the capabilities. It's now in plain English. So instead of, many of the times when I was filling out my initial paperwork, I wasn't even clear myself, and I have an advanced degree, what was being asked for. And I think that the process now has become more simplified and I just did my renewal, and I could understand the questions, and it was linear in process, so I could fill out the paperwork and manage those hurdles a lot easier than when I was first filling out the paperwork.
One of the comments that we seem to get in the Small Business Committee is some of these applications can be tedious and cumbersome and really hard to navigate. So it's nice to see that it's starting to become less intrusive on the small business owner, so they can fill it out themselves rather than hire outside help, which obviously is can be difficult. Ms. Lee, you talked about I think you mentioned they hand out the contracts to the bigger contractors or what have you. So what should we be looking at in order to allow that small business owner to be on that same footing when the decisions are made?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think there should be some kind of systematic training, a long-term training for all people who are involved, and not just the contracting officers, but programming and project management, everyone who touches contracts. Those people have to be trained so they understand their roles and responsibilities, as well as the functions they need to play when it comes to awarding a contract to a large or small. So 8As should be in the picture, should be part of the process.
Well, thank you very much. And Mr. Thomas, I was going to ask you a question. It was going to be better than the ranking members, but I'm out of time. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. And now we recognize the chairwoman of the Subcommittee on Investigation, Oversight, and Regulations, Ms. Chu from California, for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. And I'm so pleased that all of the panelists are here, but in particular Dottie Lee. I've known her for over 2 decades, and she is such a great leader in the community. So thank you for being here. And I'd like to applaud the work that your company does in helping non-native English-speaking workers become more effective communicators. I believe it's so critical that we educate our business and federal agencies in cultural competency, especially as more and more of our economy relies on a workforce from diverse backgrounds. So I'd like to follow up on your story, first on the frustrations you had on certification, and then the hurdles that you faced as you tried to secure a government contract through the 8A program. It's important to recognize that your business had already contracted with a long list of federal agencies. So we know that your services have been in demand. But now, 1 year into your 8A certification, your business has not secured a federal contract through the program. These circumstances, however, are not unique. In fact, Mr. Thomas noted in his testimony that many participants never receive an 8A contract during their entire tenure in the program. But with one-time eligibility and a 9-year window to participate, it's important that firms can take full advantage of their time in the program. So, Ms. Lee, can you talk about the certification process and what things you would do to improve it, but also talk about how you would improve the process of getting a contract? You referred to some things about improvement, such as the need for a check-in mechanism and a need to improve the vendor outreach sessions and a need to strengthen the mentorship program. So first, the certification.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Chu. It's wonderful to see you today. And the certification process for us was long and lengthy, as I alluded to. I was blessed to have many people who provided their support and expertise. And my counselor, Mr. Richard Payton, is here from PTAC, Maryland PTAC, and Director Denise Warner is also here. She runs the PTAC program. And Mr. Payton has helped me tremendously through that process. I didn't have to find someone to pay someone to provide the service, and as well as other entities, SDBC, and some folks who are former SBA officials who provided tremendous support in that process. And then during that waiting game, I spotted Mr. Rob Wan, who's
what would you do to improve it?
What do I have to do? I would say that online process right now, even though it's improved by a lot from the paperwork days. However, it's just too cumbersome for anyone to go through it. There are times where the languages are not clear. There are times that the steps are not clear. How would you interpret something when you don't even understand the language? That was the process, and it was frustrating. I was able to eventually get through to folks who intervened to get to the person who needed to help us.
And then you said, in terms of getting the contract, there are certain things that needed to be improved, like the vendor outreach sessions. Could you say something about that?
Absolutely. I love going to these vendor outreach sessions. I always have the best time meeting with different agencies, and they have those matchmaking sessions. It's sort of like a speed dating, not that I know anything about it. And you go from agency to agency. I pitch my story. I have the full passion to tell them what we do, and they promise you the world. They say, come to us, and we're going to work with you, and you send emails and just crickets and nothing afterwards.
So how could that be improved?
I think vendor outreach sessions should be staffed by contracting people, programming people, not just the ASTBU folks. And I think they're great, yet we need to talk to program people directly in order to make a difference so they can hear the kind of services we offer.
And then you talk about strengthening the mentorship program. Do you have a mentor?
I don't really have a mentor. I tried to reach out to another 8A firm for quite some time now at the suggestion of a wonderful ASTBU person. I do my outreach. I check in with them. I see them at different functions. Yet, it's like a relationship. It may be not gelling yet, but I'm still hoping to find a mentor who will show us the ropes.
So getting that mentorship program going so you could actually have a mentor.
That would be
is
critical.
really important.
That would be critical.
Yes. Thank you.
Could I just add one more? As of yesterday afternoon, we got words from this particular group that our first 8A BPA contract is moving forward. So I think it's very interesting. Timing is everything. The day before I came to testify.
Time has expired, and now we recognize Mr. Balderson, Ranking Member of the Subcommittee on Innovation and Workforce Development from Ohio, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the panelists for being here today. And I'm going to kind of jump around because I've been paying attention. And Mr. McAllister, this is going to be directed at you, but you talked a little bit about it with the ranking member. So the rest of the panel, if you would kind of jump in with this question I have. And Mr. McAllister talked about he did not apply for this until he was 7 years in business, I believe was the number that you used. How about the rest of you? Did you jump in immediately, or did you wait some time before you were a little bit more established?
Yes, thank you. We were several years established before we started our 8A program.
Okay. How did that? How were the first couple of years? You wanted to wait a couple of years, but what did you do that you thought was some of the good processes that you went through to wait for that?
Sure. We recognized that even if we had gotten a contract, we wouldn't have known what to do with it. We didn't have the infrastructure necessary, the bookkeeping, all of the things that are required. And so we started on the commercial side like Mr. McAllister did and started looking for work that way. And that's actually how we ended up getting the chops to be able to support a contract once we received it.
Okay. And Mrs. Lee? Mrs. Lee, would you like to add anything to that?
I think the fact that we are able to make an imprint with federal agencies, and at least they are aware, and it's just a matter of doing more work, and that seems to be getting really old. So I was hoping that the 8A program would give us a tremendous boost right away off the bat. But again, it's taken a whole year, almost a full year. But I'm looking forward to taking full advantage of the program moving forward.
Okay, thank you. And how long were you in business before you made the decision to go with the program?
10 years.
10 years, okay.
Actually, 9.
9.
Right now, it's 10.
All right, thank you. My follow-up to all of you, and again, you can all just jump in and speak up, but beyond extending the program window, what you all talked about, do you believe there is something else the SBA could do to help foster those early critical years? I mean, obviously, those are the most important years to get going, but is there something else out there the SBA could do to accommodate that? And Mr. Thomas?
If I could answer.
I would love to have you answer. You were going to be the first one I was going to say.
Yes, yes. Well, I think the most critical is marketing. To be in the 8A program, it takes a firm to fiercely market the agencies to get contracts. That they have to figure out where they land, where they stand, what their status is in terms of what they have to offer. And then they have to see if the agency is buying that. And then they have to almost show the agency how they can do it, how the agency would benefit from using them, from using their niche, and this is how. And you explain how. And first of all, they have to show the agency how the agency already buys it and how it would be beneficial, less costly for them to use them as an 8A contractor. And I've seen many contractors market to agencies and get them to set aside an 8A contract merely from the marketing. But you need training to do that. You need really good training, personalized training, because it's not easy. Everybody doesn't know how to do it. The businesses that thrive in the 8A program have something very special, and that's the marketing edge, and then the performance after that. Agencies stick with 8A companies that they're satisfied with.
Okay. Ms. Lee? Ma'am? Ms.
Yes.
Lee? Did you want to follow up with anything with that, or Mr. McAllister or Ms. Askew, would you like to?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that haven't been mentioned today is the SBA has a program called the Emerging Leaders Program, and I think it would be wise if it was coupled with the 8A program. It was an amazing program for me to, it was like a mini MBA. Great opportunity. I learned so much about the government arena, and I think coupling that with the 8A program, requiring 8A companies to do that would assist them in the long run.
And Emerging Leaders, where was that? Is that from the SBA?
Mm-hmm. It's
right.
the Emerging Leaders Program.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I yield back. Thank you all very much.
The gentleman yields back, and now I recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Spano, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize. I got to the meeting late. I want to direct a couple questions to Mr. McAllister. If the questions were answered or asked already, I apologize in advance. One of the things that we did back at our Chamber of Commerce back home was to develop a mentorship program for young people, right? Because we understood, especially for economically disadvantaged young people, to try and teach them what it's like to hang around a small business, and give them an idea whether or not they want to do that someday, right? Start their own business. So the challenge that we had, though, was that it was tough for us to find mentors. And I think a question just a moment ago, I believe it was Ms. Lee, about whether or not you've been able to find a mentor so far. So I guess my question is, what do you think that the SBA could do better, if you have any suggested solutions, to encouraging more mentors to participate?
Well, I think it's easier to find mentors in the community to mentor the youth. From the SBA MPA program, a mentor protege is like a marriage or like dating. And then we establish a joint venture under the MPA, that's a marriage. So there is financial risk from both sides, from the mentor and from the protege. So like Ms. Lee said, it's, let's go out, let's have dinner, let's have lunch, let's get to know each other. Do we match with each other, our cultures? Because, oftentimes, through the mentor protege, the mentors provide training to the protege staff. So it's not just sign a document and let's move on. There's a lot to it. So, but what the SBA can do is perhaps just build that speed dating environment or dates or sessions with large businesses, or the agencies can do it as well. With large agencies come in with the 8A companies and just get to know each other. Because in our case, it took us perhaps a year or two to find that right mentor. And we actually had the first one didn't work out at all. They were all for getting one contract that they were incumbent, and they want to recompete, and they seeked us just for that. And when that fell through, the mentor project went away. So it took us about another year to find another mentor, and we've had three mentors, one under the 8A and one under the Hubzone program. But it takes time to get to know each other and find the right match.
And if I may just ask a follow-up, so relating to the mentor protege program, if you could say one thing that, from your experience as a mentor and as a protege, the one thing that you can think of that comes immediately to mind that really works well, and one thing that you say probably needs work.
Well, the training works well. you can find the right match, the right mentor, and you have needs, say in accounting, marketing, payroll, they can help you with that. What doesn't work well is perhaps the red tape that's involved with it. Because you apply for the 8A program, then you have your annual 8A recertifications, and you have to apply for a mentor protege, which oftentimes can take months as well. And then every year you have to recertify that mentor protege. So I think in general it's the red tape that's involved with both the 8A and the mentor protege program that just needs to be streamlined.
And you mentioned in your testimony that most 8A contractors don't gain momentum in the program until around their 5th year. Is that a result, in your opinion, of some of the red tape that's associated with the program?
I think it's more than anything is find the right match in terms of customers. Here in the DC area, there's all the federal agencies are here. Out west, we don't have that plethora of agencies. So I think it's finding that right customer, that right agency that can give you a shot, that first opportunity, and then be able to grow with them. Again, in our case, we had to go out of our comfort zone, out of Arizona to go into Colorado, Texas, New Mexico, and oftentimes into areas where nobody else wanted to go because it was in the middle of nowhere. But there was a Marine base there or an Army base there that needed our services. And that's what it takes, perhaps, for the 8A companies have that, first of all, somebody to tell them where to go, because the phone is not going to ring when they become 8A. Their phone is not going to ring. It's a fishing license, and you have to go out and fish.
Thank you, sir. Madam Chair, I yield.
The gentleman yields back, and now I'm going to recognize myself for 5 minutes. So I would like to follow up on Mr. Spano's question. Mr. Thomas and Mr. McAllister, if there is anything more SBA should be doing to facilitate or incentivize the use of mentor protege, so that more small businesses are able to participate and benefit from it.
One thing that I could suggest is a few years ago, the SBA did this match. They used to do these matchmaking events to match contracts with the contractors. Taking that another level, perhaps they could have conferences where they have only the prime contractors who want to be mentors and proteges who are looking for mentors. You have them in the same room, and at least you're not fishing for goldfish where there's only sea bass. So I think that's something that would give it a push.
Mr. McAllister, anything that will incentivize?
Yeah, I think that, definitely setting that venue for that matchmaking to occur, but also the financial support that that a protege can get. The mentor protege allows a mentor to invest up to 40% into an 8A, into his protege, and I believe that's a great vehicle. There's a lot of red tape involved with that. We try to do that and got to run around, and we just give up because we've known 8A companies. We know one in particular right now where the owner is taking a second job because he needs to support himself, and he's being threatened with getting certified from the program.
Thank you.
So even if he gets into mentor protege program, he's not able to succeed unless there's some financial investment from the mentor to the protege.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas, the government has the goal of awarding 5% of all eligible prime contracts to socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses. Under this goal, agencies get credit for all awards given to small disadvantaged businesses, whether they are 8A participants or not. Should Congress enact legislation to create a goal for the 8A program?
Yes, I think I've answered this in part before, but yes, it should. It should because, in case you didn't hear that,
yes,
yes, the answer is yes, because to determine the success of a program, you want to get as much information about how the program is working as possible, and it only stands to reason to know how much business that 8As are getting. It's not hard to gather information because they can get it easily.
Do you think that this will incentivize agencies to contract with 8A firms if we increase the goal?
Well, yes, even if you make a goal, regardless of what you put in the goal, when you're measuring someone on a certain basis, the numbers go up because nobody likes not to meet a goal. So whatever that goal is, they will. I think you will see the numbers go up.
Any other of the members of the panel will want to comment on that? Ms. Lee?
Before we became an 8A, I always heard people would say, if you were an 8A, we would give you the contract. And now we're 8A, and they say, if you're a hub zone, we'll give you the contract. So you just end up chasing that endless loop. And so where do you actually get yourself being recognized as a formidable force, and so that people could really work with you?
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that that goal should be specific for 8A programs. That way, the 8As are not just lost in the weeds.
Thank you. Ms. Askew?
Yes, thank you. I would agree with Mr. McAllister. I do think that there's value in that, and helping back to what Ms. Lee said about educating corps and contracting officers so that they understand, how to utilize the program well. I think there's a problem in that area as well.
Thank you. There is another issue that I want to discuss with you, and that is that the SBA8 program has a personal net worth limitation of less than $250,000 for initial eligibility and $750,000 for continued eligibility. This limitation has been in place since the late 1980s. It has reigned a lot, right? The DOT also has a disadvantaged business enterprise program, and in 2011 increased the personal net worth threshold for eligibility to account for inflation. So I want to hear what are your thoughts on increasing the 8A net worth limitation and adjusting it for inflation. Mr. Thomas.
Well, yes, of course. It needs to be adjusted. I mean, for any other program, it would be adjusted, and we're keeping good people out because they don't want to come down. They don't want to adjust their business lives to come under $250,000 because it wouldn't be worth it, and it just makes natural business sense to raise it, at least for inflation, if not beyond that.
Thank you. Any other who wants to comment?
I tend to agree in principle that adjustment should be made for inflation. I don't have a problem with increasing it. However, I am a participant. I am a cross-cultural communication specialist. I'm not an economist. So I think a survey of economic survey of some sort has to be conducted to determine how much to increase and when to increase.
Thank you.
Those limits should be increased like everything has increased in the last 30 years. Agreed.
Ms. Askew.
Yes, thank you. I would say that the corresponding NAICS codes, the amount that awards can be, have increased, so it would make sense that this would also be increased.
Thank you. Ms. Lee, the 8A program has a 9-year lifespan, which is divided into 2 phases, an initial 4-year developmental stage and a final 5-year transition stage. Is this enough time for a small firm to fully realize their potential and win contracts with the government?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman. That's such a great question. The short answer is no. Clearly from my fellow panelists and our own experience have shown that the first 4 years are critical for you to understand, to grow, to be trained, to be mentored in order to fully understand the process. So by the time you actually understand a little bit more than we are in this process, 4 years already gone.
Thank you.
And then you have to graduate or transition out of the program.
So do you have any of the members of the panel can comment on this question? Do you have any suggestion on how to improve either the 4-year developmental stage or the 5-year transition stage?
Well, I think that the program should be increased over 9 years for starters, because 9 years is not enough. So, perhaps 10 years and make it 5 years developmental, 5 years transition, or something along the lines. Just a little bit more time for companies to keep to get traction because before they start that transitional stage.
Thank you. Any other comment? Ms.
Yes, thank you. I do know that we are in the transition stage currently, and they require us to make sure that we have a certain blend of 8A and non-8A work at this point. And so it makes it hard because once you just start ramping up, it's time to ramp down in terms of the amount of 8A work. So you have to be cognizant of your balance, and that makes it difficult.
Thank you. Well, let me take this opportunity again to thank all of you and for taking time of your busy schedule to be with us today. The 8A program is the hallmark of all contracting programs managed by the Small Business Administration. Not only it is the oldest, but it's the one in which the agency has the most expertise. Now, just as 40 years ago, the program remains equally important because of the impact it has on enhancing minority entrepreneurship and strengthening the federal marketplace. I want to again thank our witnesses for offering their valuable insights today, and I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle on ways to improve the 8A program. With that, I will ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statement and supporting materials for the record. Without objection, so ordered, and if there is no further business to come before the committee, we are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.